Friend of the program, Donovan Mitchell, still waiting for the Donovan. Do you want teammates traded or what's going on here? He's looking for the free agency moves to be made, GA, but I think his team is pretty well intact. I mean, they've made a move already.
Well, they got Ty Jerome still to figure out if something's going to happen.
Maybe that's what that's about.
Yeah.
How about this? Free agent Paul Reed, also former G League MVP, agreed to a 2-year, $11 million deal. The Detroit Pistons. But here's the thing, Ryan. When I look at the Pistons, obviously they are a team on the rise. Malik Beasley is really the one, right? Because we know now there's gambling allegations, had a contract extension on the table. I believe it was for $42 million. And it's one of those situations where, well, he was very valuable for them. If they're not able to bring him back, now they have a new issue to address.
They do, and I'll be interested to see if they create enough cap space to be aggressive for a player like Nickeil Alexander-Walker, who we were just discussing. The Minnesota Timberwolves took care of their front court in a big way. They gave Julius Randle a 3-year, $100 million deal, and they gave Naz Reid a 5-year, $125 million deal. So they're good up front, especially with Rudy Gobert there. But they really can't afford to pay Nickeil Alexander-Walker. So Chris mentioned the two teams, and I agree with them. One is the Detroit Pistons, who can make some moves. They can renounce some free agents and create enough cap space to sign Nickeil Alexander-Walker. The other one's a little more complicated, but that is the Atlanta Hawks. They have a big trade exception, guys, that I believe expires on July 7th. That would have to be a sign and trade with the participation of the Minnesota Timberwolves. And obviously, to participate in a sign and trade, especially when you're sending a good player out, you need to get something back of value in return. But keep an eye on that, because as this market moves quickly, I think Nickeil Alexander-Walker is one of the best unrestricted free agents. We know he's a bigger guard who can play both ends of the court, Greg, and he's one that has value. And I think teams with a little cap space or the big exceptions feel like they may have a chance to sign. It can be a complementary rotation player.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of that young man. He's a terrific two-way player, three-point shooter. He's tough-minded, and he's coming from a winning culture. You know, back-to-back conference finals he's been a part of. So, like, those are the kinds of players, especially if you're a team like Detroit who's ascending. I think he'd be a great fit, especially in light of what's going on with Beasley. So that's a guy who, if you're trying to get to the next level, and the Hawks have made some moves that are telling everyone they want to contend this upcoming season. And keep in mind also, because of the landscape of the Eastern Conference has changed with that Jason Tatum injury. That has really kind of opened up the door a little bit more, with Cleveland having a great regular season but kind of falling flat there in the postseason. If you're in that Eastern Conference, you got to feel like you're close enough to have an opportunity. Indy's not going to have Halliburton. So that Eastern Conference has become wide open, and I think that's going to make teams maybe be a little more aggressive in terms of moves they're willing to make to have a chance to contend next season.
Well, to that point that you made, because earlier we mentioned the Phoenix Suns, and now you've mentioned the Atlanta Hawks. How do you think their off seasons have turned out so far, with the Hawks getting, Kristaps Porziņģis and potentially being active after Nickeil Alexander-Walker, and also drafting Asa Newell, who could be an excellent player alongside Trae Young?
Yeah, and also keep in mind they're going to get Johnson back next season. The pick they had last year, he's had a year. Reshape. He's had an opportunity. He'll have an opportunity to grow and get stronger. So they're trending in the right direction. I'm anxious to see what Atlanta could ultimately look like. And as we see the rest of this free agency play out, what teams, more so even in the East for me, because the West, the top looks like it's going to be pretty stable. But there's a lot of room to make moves if you're in the Eastern Conference to move up in the pecking order. And so I think the next couple of days is going to be really interesting to see who's willing to be aggressive enough to step out. And you can see this Hawks team, even with the moves they've made, they're going to still need to really fortify that backcourt. So it would make, to Ryan's point, great sense for them to be able to go out and get a guy like Nickeil Alexander-Walker.
Yeah, it looks like he fits in right there with Trae Young and Dyson Daniels. Also, to that extent, Ryan, I mean, injury insurance in the sense of if Dyson Daniels or Trae Young misses time, he could step in as a starter, but also seems like a great guy to have off the bench.
Yeah, I really like the Hawks offseason so far. They unloaded Trey Mann's contract, brought back Kristaps Porziņģis. We know what Kristaps is capable of if he's healthy. He's also in a contract year, so he's going to want to play well. I really like the fit there with his ability to protect the rim behind Trae Young and his ability to space the floor. He's a unique player. We know what he's capable of when healthy. Another important factor here, Chris, is for those who say, well, why don't the Hawks just rebuild? They really can't for the next couple of years They still owe the San Antonio Spurs an unprotected pick swap next year and then an unprotected first in 2027. Both of those are their own picks. That's still what Atlanta owes San Antonio from the DeJounte Murray deal. So Atlanta has been aggressive and I think will continue to be aggressive because they don't have their own picks. And as you guys know, the last place you want to be is a bad team and not control your own pick. So they're going to try to be aggressive and get out of that play-in rut and make the playoffs. And I think with the injuries in the East, they have a chance to be a top 6 team and avoid the play-in next season.
Breaking news courtesy of Chris Haynes, who's on his phone right now and also tweeting on TV. Jake LaRavia to the Los Angeles Lakers, 2 years, $12 million. This doesn't necessarily seem to fit the perimeter defender profile that you were telling us they may need.
No,
but how does Jake LaRavia fit with the Lakers?
Doesn't fit that fact. I mean, he's a young guy. He has promising talent. You know, he's a really good player. The Kings love him. They actually wanted to resign him, and I think something happened last minute to where things fell apart, and he ended up with the Lakers. But the Lakers, I knew they were high on Jake. I just didn't think that they were going to be able to get him away from the Sacramento Kings. But they did what they had to do, and he's definitely a good piece. But, no, he doesn't feel that perimeter defender that I think they will need desperately this season.
Yeah, 42% from three-point range, still 23 years young, Ryan. Seems like a guy that, well, if you need some outside shooting, there's going to be open looks playing alongside Luka Dončić. Does seem like a good move, but I kind of go, okay, Dalton Connect, Austin Reeves. Now you had a guy who kind of shoots from outside as well in Jake LaRavia.
So I wonder if this is a situation where the Lakers hope to re-sign Dorian Finney-Smith as soon as they knew he was leaving. And Chris reported that he's going to the Houston Rockets on that 4-year deal. Yeah. They pivoted to the next best guy they thought or knew they could get and got him locked in right away. Because when the free agent class is light, you don't want to wait too long and get too cute with it, especially if you're a team like the Lakers with the great LeBron James still in his prime at 40 years old, with Luka facing a contract extension, Austin Reeves likely an unrestricted free agent next year. You want to be aggressive. So I think they figured Jake LaRavia was the best player they could get without a lot of financial flexibility to do that. But I agree with what Chris said earlier. I have some concerns about their perimeter defense, and I think they're putting a lot of pressure on their star perimeter trio and whichever center they sign. We'll see if it's DeAndre Ayton, Clint Capella, or somebody else. They're putting a lot of pressure on those guys to really carry the team on both ends of the court because this isn't a roster with a ton of depth.
You know, Jay, whenever we get into this situation where the pieces are coming together and we go, it seems like this team still has a glaring need. I feel like the Lakers are a trade candidate waiting to happen when you look at the redundancy on this roster and guys that can shoot from outside but not perimeter defenders.
I think you make a great point, Chris. That you do get a sense that they're going to have to bolster their perimeter defense in some capacity. Now, the one thing they do have is they've got perimeter shooting. So oftentimes that could be the offset. That could be what you're able to give up in order to get some of that perimeter defense that they're going to need. And we still have to wait and see if they're going to be able to finalize the situation with the center position. Is it going to be DeAndre Ayton? Is it going to be Clint Capella? I'm waiting on my man, Mr. Haynes, to fill us in.
Are you tweeting again?
No, not to tweet it. It's funny, you know, whoever the center is going to be, we have a pretty good idea.
DeAndre Ayton?
I mean, we'll see. We'll see what happens. A lot happens in free agency. So as of right now, I do believe the Lakers will address the perimeter defensive situation. But if this is it, that center is going to have some work to do. That center is going to be very busy back there. It's going to be a lot of funneling in that direction. And so whether that's DeAndre Ayton, Brook Lopez, or Clint Capella, they're going to have a lot of work to do as of right now. But I do think the Lakers have somebody in mind, possibly. A name I'll throw out there, DeAnthony Melton. You know, he's a guy out there that's available, known as a defensive player. Is he good enough to fill that hole? I don't know, but he's a guy that's out there.
Now, speaking of which, because we've mentioned Mark Williams and we talked about the Atlanta Hawks, but I want to go back to the Phoenix Suns, a team that obviously you were in the front office for, and really an interesting offseason for them because they move on from one of the greatest scorers we've ever seen in Kevin Durant. But then they go and they get that front line together even more. Mark Williams, Kambi Malawach, 10th in the NBA draft, and Dillon Brooks. So what do you make of where they are as a group when you look at their their depth chart? And Ryan Dunn had a phenomenal rookie year from a defensive perspective.
I think they're great at the shooting guard spot. Now they're solid at the center spot, and they have a lot of holes on the rest of the roster that they need to address. One important thing to keep in mind, guys, is the Jalen Green, Dylan Brooks trade coming in from Houston. That is not done. That will not be done and finalized until after the moratorium on July 6th. And I bring that up because that deal could be expanded. So one of the things I'm keeping an eye on with Phoenix over the next 5 or 6 days is Jalen Green rerouted to a third team. Is Bradley Beal bought out or traded? Keep in mind, Beal has one of the two no-trade clauses. LeBron has the other, so he'd need to give his permission. But I think one of those guys, Jalen Green or Bradley Beal, is not going to be on the Suns' opening night roster. And I'll go on a limb here, guys, and say I think there's a chance neither one of them, Bradley Beal or Jalen Green, are on the Suns' opening night roster. They have Devin Booker. He's eligible for an extension. I think he will sign it. That would be a 2-year, $150 million extension. $75 million a year would be the biggest number anybody's put up in NBA history as far as an extension. I think that's likely. So when your franchise player plays the shooting guard spot and commands all that money, I think and hope the Suns will try to balance out the roster, moving one or both of Green and Beal.
All right, I need to shift my chair for a second. So this is not the first time, my friend, that I heard that Jalen Green and Bradley Beal will most likely both not be on the Phoenix Suns roster.
You've heard this before?
Yeah, so what do you know about this?
I think right now, I would lean, if we're talking about those two players, I would lean towards saying more so Bradley Beal won't be a part of the roster next season. From what I've been told as of right now, the plan is for Jalen Green to be on there, but, we shall see.
So when I look at that situation, we've heard maybe one trade rumor, GA. Bradley Beal to the Chicago Bulls. Outside of that, it seems like buyout is what we hear in regards to Bradley Beal. That's over $100 million in buyout money. That just seems like an astronomical number.
Yeah, that is really interesting as to whether or not that could ultimately happen. I think the other aspect of it is, is there a potential scenario where a deal could be constructed? Or as Ryan said, he's got a no trade, so he's going to have to sign off on it. But then the other aspect is, does the ownership decide to say, look, if you take this, we will pay X amount of the salary? Because they could still pay some of his salary if they're able to trade it, even though they were able to get the overall number off their books. Because I don't see a scenario where you're going to buy out a guy when he's got 2 years left at that number. That's not something you typically see in our league. But that could be something that you can entice a team with, also maybe throwing in the first-round pick.
Yeah, and this may be going down the CBA rabbit hole a little bit, guys, but bear with me. Recently, the Suns waived and stretched a couple guys, Nasir Little, E.J. Liddell. You can only have so much of your cap space be dead contracts, buyout contracts. So Bradley Beal has to give some money back. The Phoenix Suns certainly don't want to eat his whole salary, but even if they wanted to, they can't. He needs to accept less in the form of buyout. By my calculations, he needs to give about $13.9–14 million back to the Suns. Then they could waive and stretch him if they want to spread the cap hit out. But, guys, frankly, he makes so much money that that's not a great thing going forward. It may help the Suns in the short term a little bit with their luxury tax, reducing payroll. So I think they'll continue to explore trades. The challenge is, and we were talking about this earlier, Greg, if you're another team who wants Bradley Beal, so why would we pay him $55 million a year over the next 2 years when we could potentially just get him in a buyout and sign him for an extension? Phoenix, if they buy him out, he'll make most of his money there. It could be a boon for a contending team or even just a solid team like Chicago who wants to take that next step. If they sit back, Beal gets bought out, and then they can add him as a free agent without giving up any value.
Yeah, I think that's the Phoenix Suns' plans right now is to try to explore trade scenarios out there for Bradley Beal, which I don't think they're going to find anything really that's going to benefit them, and which is going to lead them to ultimately having to buy out Bradley Beal. Brian, has there ever been a buyout of this salary structure, massive salary?
I'm trying to think. One that comes to mind, I'd have to go back and look it up, but remember Josh Smith in Detroit? Had a lot of money left with Detroit. Yeah. But this is unusual. It usually, I hate to say this, Chris, but something usually has to go very wrong. And this one is unique because Bradley Beal also has the no-trade clause. So even if Phoenix was able to construct a deal that they think makes sense for them, we know at this point it's not going to be a great deal. At best, it's a so-so deal where they take back other money that teams don't want.
Yeah.
But they could do all that, and then if Bradley Beal gives the thumbs down, they can't trade him. And that's what makes the situation so unique. This is where, frankly, Phoenix messed up 2 years ago by not having Beal remove his no-trade clause. When the Suns acquired him from the Washington Wizards, they could have made, as a condition of the deal, that no-trade clause go away. They let him arrive in Phoenix, keep that no-trade clause intact, and now they're paying the price for it. And they may have to eat close to $100 million in a buyout and watch Bradley Beal play somewhere else.
Well, there's been one team that's been busy here on the first day of free agency, and it's bringing home their own, the Memphis Grizzlies. We talk about Triple J getting paid next on Free Agent Fever.